I'm Laura Mitchell, 35, a lieutenant at the Tacoma base. Birthdays aren't my thing, no fuss, no frills. But this one was different. My family threw a party at my parents' place, and my sister handed me a gift box, her smile too wide. I was about to open it when my commander, who'd stopped by, grabbed my arm. "Don't touch it," he said, his voice low. I froze. "What's going on?" I asked. He pointed at the label, Silverline Imports. It wasn't just a logo. It was trouble. 15 minutes later, military police swarmed the backyard, their boots heavy on the grass. My sister's face went pale, and my parents started whispering. I stood there, the box in my hands, heart pounding, wondering how a birthday gift could unravel my life. Something was wrong, and I was about to find out what. If you've ever had a family moment turn into a nightmare, drop your story in the comments. Hit subscribe to catch how this one ends. You won't believe what happened next. My commander, James Carter, was pacing by the patio table, his jaw tight. He motioned for me to leave. When we got home, he said, "Open it carefully," his voice steady but urgent. "But don't touch anything inside." I set the box on the kitchen counter, my fingers brushing the Silverline Imports label. It was too neat, too professional for a birthday gift. I peeled back the tape, revealing a stack of decorative vases, cheap, glossy knockoffs. My stomach twisted. I'd seen these before. Last month, I'd visited my sister's apartment in Seattle. Her living room was cluttered with boxes just like this one, all stamped with that same logo. She'd laughed it off, saying she was trying something new with her art business. I hadn't pushed, but now it hit me, this wasn't just a gift. It was a clue. James leaned over, his eyes narrowing at the vases. "Silverline Imports is under federal investigation," he said. "They're tied to fraudulent shipments, fake goods, shady deals. This box, it's evidence." My mind raced. Why would my sister give me something like this? I needed answers. I grabbed my phone and dialed my mom, Margaret Mitchell. She picked up on the second ring, her voice dripping with that overly sweet tone she used when she wanted to avoid trouble. "Laura, honey, is everything okay?" That was quite a scene at the party. I gripped the phone tighter. The gift from my sister. "What do you know about it?" I asked, keeping my tone even. She hesitated just a beat too long. "Oh, it's just a little something she thought you'd like," she said. You know how creative she is. Creative? That was one way to put it. I pressed harder. "Mom, this box has a logo from a company under investigation. Why is it in my hands?" Her laugh was forced, brittle. "You're overthinking, Laura. It's just a gift." But I wasn't buying it. That pause, that tone, it was the same one she used when my sister got into trouble before, when I was expected to clean up the mess. I hung up, my pulse hammering. James was watching me, his arms crossed. "What's the deal with your sister?" he asked. I didn't want to admit it, but the pieces were falling into place. My sister, Emily Mitchell, was always the free spirit, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Growing up, I was the responsible one, straight A student, military career, always fixing her mistakes. Like the time she borrowed my credit card for art supplies and racked up $2,000 in charges. I'd paid it off like always. But this felt bigger, darker. If she was tied to Silverline Imports, she wasn't just being reckless. She was playing with fire. I turned to James. "I need to know more about this company," I said. He nodded, pulling out his phone to text someone at the base. "I'll get you access to the investigation files," he said. "But Laura, if your sister's involved, this could get messy. For you, for your career." I knew he was right. As a lieutenant, any hint of scandal could derail my promotion. But I couldn't let this go. I had to know what Emily was hiding and why she'd dragged me into it. The vases were just the start. I needed hard proof, and Sophie Turner, my friend and a sergeant at the Tacoma base, was the one to help me find it. The next morning, I met her in the base's IT room, where she'd pulled some strings to access secure servers. "Let's dig into Silverline Imports." I said, my laptop open to a DoD database James had unlocked for me. Sophie's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up email threads tied to the company. Within an hour, we founded a bank account under my name, Lieutenant Laura Mitchell, linked to a contract for Silverline Imports to supply equipment to a military contractor. My name, my rank, my signature. Except I'd never signed anything. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just fraud. It was a Department of Defense matter, and my career was hanging by a thread. Sophie scrolled through the records, her face grim. This account was opened 3 months ago, she said. It's tied to a $500,000 loan for business expenses. The contract's got your name all over it, Laura. I stared at the screen, the forged signature staring back like a betrayal. Only one person could have done this, my sister Emily. She'd always been the free spirit chasing art dreams while I played the responsible one. But forging my name on a DoD contract worth $500,000. That was a new low, even for her. If the Army thought I was involved, I could kiss my promotion goodbye, maybe even face a court-martial under the uniform code. I grabbed my phone and called Emily. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice light like nothing was wrong. "Hey Laura, what's up?" she said. I didn't bother with small talk. "There's a bank account in my name tied to Silverline Imports," I said, my tone flat. "A DoD contract with my signature for $500,000. Explain it." Her laugh was quick, too sharp. "You're joking, right? I don't know anything about that." "Must be a mix-up." "A mix-up." My grip tightened on the phone. "This isn't a game," I said. "My name's on a fake contract. This could ruin me." She went quiet, then snapped, "You're always so dramatic. Maybe someone stole your info. Don't pin this on me." She hung up before I could respond. Typical Emily dodge, deflect, disappear. I was still fuming when my phone buzzed again. It was my mom, Margaret Mitchell. "Laura, we need to talk," she said, her voice soft but firm. I knew that tone. It was her fix this voice. "What's this about, Emily?" I asked, already bracing myself. "Your dad and I heard about your call," she said. "You're upsetting her, Laura. She's sensitive. Whatever this is, let it go. We're family." I clenched my jaw. "Mom, she used my name on a military contract. This could ruin me." She sighed like I was the problem. "You're strong, Laura. Emily's not. Don't tear this family apart over a mistake." My dad, Thomas Mitchell, got on the line. "She's right," he said. "Don't make this public. It'll hurt us all." I hung up my hands, shaking. They were doing it again, protecting Emily, expecting me to clean up her mess. Growing up, I'd covered for her bad grades, her missed rent, her borrowed credit card. But this wasn't a small favor. This was my name on a DoD fraud case worth $500,000. Sophie looked at me, her eyes steady. "What's your next move?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "We keep digging," I said. "I need every email, every transaction. If Emily's behind this, I'm not letting her hide." Sophie nodded, already pulling up more files. My parents wanted silence, but I wasn't their fixer anymore. I was done playing the good daughter. It was time to face my family with the truth. On Saturday, I drove to my parents' house in Seattle, a folder of printed emails and a forged contract tucked under my arm. Sophie had helped me pull the documents from the DoD database, and they were damning: a contract with Silverline Imports signed with my name, Lieutenant Laura Mitchell, for a fake equipment deal worth $500,000. My stomach churned as I parked outside the familiar craftsman-style house. This wasn't just about money. It was my career, my reputation on the line. If I didn't act, the Army might think I was complicit in a Department of Defense fraud case. I took a deep breath and walked inside, ready for a fight. My mom, Margaret Mitchell, greeted me at the door, her smile tight. "Laura, you didn't say you were coming?" she said, her voice edged with worry. My dad, Thomas Mitchell, was in the living room flipping through a newspaper. My sister Emily sat on the couch, her phone in hand, acting like nothing was wrong. I didn't waste time. I dropped the folder on the coffee table, the papers spilling out. "This contract has my name on it," I said, my voice steady. Signed for Silverline Imports to supply fake equipment to a military contractor worth $500,000. Explain it. Emily's eyes flicked to the papers, then back to her phone. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her tone flippant. Sounds like a mistake. A mistake? My hands clenched. This isn't a mix-up, I said, pointing to the forged signature. My name, my rank on a DoD contract. This could get me court-martialed. My mom stepped forward, her hands clasped. Laura, calm down, she said. You're making a scene. Emily wouldn't do this. My dad set his paper down, his face stern. She's right, Laura. You're blowing this out of proportion. It's probably just a clerical error. I opened the folder, pulling out an email chain Sophie had found. This email sent from your account. Emily confirms the deal, I said. It's addressed to a contractor promising delivery of equipment that doesn't exist. My name's all over it. Emily's face paled, but she shrugged. Someone must have hacked me, she said, her voice sharp. Why are you always blaming me? I stared at her, the same excuse she'd used for every mess I'd cleaned up: her failed art shows, her unpaid bills. But this wasn't a bill I could pay off. This was my life. My mom's voice softened, that familiar fix, this tone. Laura, you're the strong one, she said. Emily's struggling. If this is a mistake, don't make it worse. We're family. My dad nodded. Think about our reputation, he said. If you take this to the authorities, it'll ruin us all. I felt the air leave the room. They were doing it again, closing ranks around Emily, expecting me to take the hit. Growing up, I'd been the one to fix her mistakes to keep the peace. But this time, it wasn't just about family. It was about my integrity, my career. No, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. I'm not covering for her anymore. This contract could land me in front of a military board. I'm reporting it. Emily stood, her eyes flashing. You're so perfect, aren't you? She snapped. Always playing the hero. You'll destroy everything just to prove a point. My mom grabbed my arm. Laura, please, she said. We can fix this quietly. I pulled away, my resolve hardening. You want to protect her, fine, I said. But I'm protecting myself. I gathered the papers and walked out, their voices fading behind me. This wasn't over, but I was done playing their game. I called Sophie the next day, and we got to work. In her office at the Tacoma base, we spread out every document we'd pulled from the DoD database. Sophie, with her knack for tech, traced IP logs from the email account tied to Silverline Imports. These emails came from a Seattle IP, she said, her voice steady. Same area as your parents' house. My jaw tightened. It wasn't a hacker like Emily claimed. It was her. We spent days cross-referencing transaction records. Sophie found a chain of emails between the fake account in my name and a shady contractor confirming delivery of non-existent equipment. The deal was worth $500,000 funneled through a bank account I'd never opened. Each piece of evidence felt like a nail in the coffin of my sister's lies, but it wasn't enough to just know the truth. I needed a legal case. James had connected me with Agent Brooks, a federal investigator working the Silverline Imports case for the DoD. He's expecting you, James said. Bring everything you've got. I met Brooks at a federal building in downtown Tacoma, a gray office that smelled of coffee and bureaucracy. Agent Brooks, a man in his 40s with a no-nonsense stare, shook my hand firmly. Lieutenant Mitchell, he said, your commander says you've got something on Silverline Imports. I handed him a binder, pages, meticulously organized IP logs, email threads, bank statements, and the forged contract with my name. This account was opened using my identity. I said, my voice calm but firm. I didn't sign this contract. My sister Emily did. Brooks flipped through the binder, his eyes scanning each page. This is solid, he said. The IP logs tie the emails to a specific location. We can work with this. I explained everything: Emily's history of dodging responsibility, the boxes in her apartment, her flippant denial when I confronted her. Brooks listened, jotting notes. If this checks out, he said, we're looking at federal charges, fraud, identity theft, maybe more, given the DoD angle. My stomach twisted. I wanted justice, but the thought of my sister facing prison hit hard. Still, I couldn't back down. "What's next?" I asked. Brooks leaned back. "We'll verify these documents and trace the funds. If your sister's behind this, she's in deep." "You did the right thing coming forward, Lieutenant." Back at the base, Sophie helped me finalize the report. We added timestamps from the email servers and cross-checked bank transactions to prove the account was active during Emily's art venture period. Every detail locked into place, building a case that even my parents couldn't dismiss. I thought about their pleas to keep it in the family, but this wasn't just about them anymore. My name was on a $500,000 scam, and the Army wouldn't care about family loyalty if they thought I was involved. Under the uniform code, any hint of complicity could mean a court-martial. I wasn't risking that. By the end of the week, I sent Brooks the final report, a digital copy backed up on a secure drive. He called to confirm receipt. "We're moving forward," he said. "This could take down Silverline Imports and anyone tied to it." I nodded, my resolve firm. Emily had made her choices, and I'd made mine. I wasn't the family fixer anymore. I was a lieutenant protecting my future. 2 months after handing Brooks the evidence, I stood in a courtroom in Tacoma ready to face the truth. The federal courthouse was cold, its wooden benches packed with lawyers and onlookers. I adjusted my uniform, the weight of my lieutenant's bars grounding me. Today wasn't just about clearing my name, it was about holding my sister accountable for a $500,000 fraud that had nearly destroyed my career. The judge called the case, and I took the stand. My heart steady, despite the eyes on me. Agent Brooks sat in the front row, his nod giving me strength. I was here to end this, no matter how much it hurt. The prosecutor laid out the case against Silverline Imports, detailing the fake equipment deal tied to the Department of Defense. My name, Lieutenant Laura Mitchell, had been forged on a contract worth $500,000, a scheme to funnel money through a sham company. I testified about the evidence Sophie and I had uncovered: IP logs tracing emails to my parents' neighborhood bank statements, showing funds moving through an account I never opened, and emails confirming the deal from an account linked to my sister. I had no knowledge of this contract, I said, my voice clear. My identity was used without my consent. Emily sat at the defendant's table, her face pale, her usual confidence gone. When her lawyer called her to testify, she stood, her hands fidgeting. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, her voice cracking. "I needed money for my art business. I used Laura's name because I thought it would help get the deal through." The courtroom went quiet. My chest tightened, not from anger but from the sting of her admission. She'd known exactly what she was doing, risking my career for her own gain. The judge's gavel hit, and Emily was sentenced to 2 years of probation and community service. No prison, but her record was stained, her art dreams tainted. My parents, Margaret and Thomas Mitchell, were in the gallery, their faces drawn. The prosecutor revealed they were under investigation for attempting to conceal Emily's actions based on my testimony about their pressure to keep it in the family. No charges had been filed yet, but the scrutiny was enough to crack their perfect family image. My mom's eyes met mine, pleading, but I looked away. They'd chosen Emily over me, over justice, and now they faced the fallout. The judge cleared me of any wrongdoing, confirming my name was clean with the Army. My promotion was safe, my career intact. But as I left the stand, I felt no triumph, just a hollow ache. Outside the courthouse, Sophie waited for me, her uniform crisp. "You did it," she said, her voice soft. "You're free." I nodded, but the weight of my family's betrayal lingered. My parents had sent texts begging me to reconsider, to fix this for Emily's sake. But I was done being their scapegoat. The courtroom had given me justice, but it couldn't mend what was broken between us. Emily's actions had torn our family apart, and my parents' silence had sealed the rift. I walked away, ready to move forward, even if it meant leaving them behind. After the courtroom, I walked away from my family for good. It was time to rebuild my life. The weeks following the trial were quiet but not peaceful. My phone buzzed with texts from my mom, Margaret Mitchell, and my dad, Thomas Mitchell, asking me to talk things out for Emily's sake. I didn't respond. My sister's actions forging my name on a $500,000 contract had cost me too much. Their pleas to keep it quiet had only deepened the wound. I deleted their messages, blocked their numbers, and focused on what I could control: my career at Joint Base Lewis McChord. Back at the base, I threw myself into work. My commander assigned me to lead a new logistics project, a chance to prove myself after months of scrutiny. The weight of my lieutenant's bars felt heavier now, a reminder of what I'd fought to protect. I spent long hours in the office coordinating supply chains and mentoring younger soldiers. Sophie was there as always, checking in during breaks. "You're doing okay," she said one day, handing me a coffee. "Better than okay." I smiled, grateful for her support. She'd been my rock through the investigation, never questioning my choice to pursue the truth. Cutting ties with my family wasn't easy. Growing up, I'd been the one to hold things together, covering for Emily's mistakes, smoothing over arguments. But this time, their betrayal was too deep. Emily never apologized, never acknowledged the risk she'd put me in. My parents' silence during the trial, their willingness to protect her over me, made it clear where their loyalties lay. I didn't hate them, but I couldn't keep carrying their baggage. Setting that boundary was painful, but it was also freeing. For the first time, I was choosing myself. As I settled into my routine, I started to see the lessons in it all. Standing up for the truth had saved my career, but it had also shown me my own strength. I'd spent years trying to please my family, thinking it was my duty. But duty doesn't mean sacrificing your integrity. The Army taught me that, and this ordeal carved it into my core. I learned to trust my instincts, to lean on friends like Sophie and James, and to walk away from people who couldn't respect my worth. Those lessons weren't just for me, they were for anyone facing their own battles. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you. Sharing this hasn't been easy, but your support means the world. If you've ever had to stand up for what's right, even when it hurts, I hope my journey resonates with you. Please hit that subscribe button. It helps me keep sharing stories like this. Let's keep pushing forward together.
My sons made me proud. My daughter. Well, not everyone can be a winner. The words hit the banquet hall like a cold wind, followed by scattered, awkward laughter. I stood at the back of the room in Portland, Oregon, watching my father, Harold Bennett, deliver his retirement speech to a crowd of colleagues, family, and friends. My grip tightened on the small, wrapped box in my hands as I forced my face to remain neutral. "I owe everything to my boys," he continued, his voice swelling with pride as he gestured toward my brothers. Thomas, with his law firm, and James, expanding the family construction business. They understand what it means to build something lasting. More applause, more smiles, more validation for the Golden Sons while I remained invisible at the back of the room. My name is Naomi Bennett. I'm 39 years old, and tonight was supposed to be about celebrating my father's 40-year career as a structural engineer. Instead, it became another reminder of why I'd spent most of my adult life proving myself to a man who would never see me. The banquet hall buzzed with the comfortable chatter of people who'd known each other for decades. My father's colleagues from North Peak Engineering filled the tables, their wives dressed in their finest, everyone eager to honor Harold Bennett's distinguished career. Everyone except me seemed genuinely happy to be there. I watched Thomas lean back in his chair, basking in the praise. At 42, my oldest brother had built a successful law practice and married well. James, 38, had taken Dad's initial skepticism about his intelligence and turned it into determination, growing our family's small construction company into a regional powerhouse. Both had given Dad the grandchildren he bragged about, the sons-in-law he respected, the legacy he could point to with pride. And then there was me. Naomi's always been different, Dad had told people over the years, usually with that particular tone that made different sound like a diagnosis. She's got her head in the clouds with all those science projects. Never could get her to focus on practical things. The irony wasn't lost on me that the man who built bridges for a living had never learned to build one to his daughter. As Dad wrapped up his speech, thanking everyone for their years of friendship and collaboration, I made my decision. I walked toward the front of the room, my heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Conversations quieted as people noticed my movement. "Dad," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the sudden silence. He looked surprised to see me approaching the podium. I placed the wrapped box on the table beside him. "From your biggest failure." The room went dead quiet. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, could sense the confusion and discomfort rippling through the crowd. My father stared at the box, then at me, his mouth slightly open. I turned and walked out, leaving behind 40 years of disappointment and a lifetime of being underestimated. 20 minutes later, I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. Through the windows of the banquet hall, I could see the party continuing, though the energy seemed different now. People were probably wondering what had just happened, what was in that box, why Harold Bennett's daughter had made such a scene. The truth was, tonight had been building for decades. Growing up in the Bennett household meant understanding your place in the hierarchy. Dad was the undisputed king, the brilliant engineer who designed structures that would outlast us all. Mom was his devoted queen, managing the household and supporting his career with unwavering loyalty. Thomas and James were the princes, groomed from childhood to carry on the family tradition of building things that mattered. And I was the spare. I remembered being 8 years old, bringing Dad a drawing I'd made of a robot that could help sick people. He'd glanced at it for maybe 3 seconds before handing it back. "That's nice, sweetheart. Why don't you go help your mother in the kitchen?" When I was 12, I'd won the regional science fair with a project on biomedical engineering. Dad had missed the ceremony because James had a baseball game. "Sports build character," he'd explained later. "Science projects are just hobbies." The pattern continued through high school. While my brothers were encouraged to take advanced math and engineering courses, I was steered toward more suitable subjects. When I insisted on pursuing pre-med in college, Dad had sighed and said, "Well, nursing is a respectable career for a woman." "I want to be a doctor, not a nurse," I'd replied. "Let's see how long that lasts," he'd said with a dismissive wave. It lasted through medical school, through my residency, through my fellowship in biomedical engineering. It lasted through the countless nights I spent in labs and libraries while my brothers were getting married and having children. It lasted through every family gathering where Dad introduced Thomas as my lawyer's son, and James as the one taking over the business, while describing me as still figuring things out. Even when I started my own company 5 years ago, developing medical devices that were revolutionizing patient care, Dad remained unimpressed. "It's a nice little side business," he'd told relatives, "though I worry she's not focused enough on finding a husband." The little side business now employed 200 people and had just closed a $50 million funding round. My latest invention, a non-invasive monitoring device for cardiac patients, was being used in hospitals across the country. 3 universities had offered me research positions. Forbes had called me the most innovative biomedical engineer under 40. But tonight, at his retirement party, I was still just the daughter who'd never had what it takes. I stared at the banquet hall windows, wondering if he'd opened the box yet, wondering if anything inside would finally make him see me, wondering if it even mattered anymore. My phone rang as I sat in the parking lot. Thomas's name flashed on the screen. "Naomi, what the hell was that?" His voice was sharp with embarrassment and confusion. "Dad's sitting here with tears in his eyes and everyone's asking questions. What did you put in that box?" "The truth," I said simply. "What does that mean?" "Mom's freaking out. James is trying to calm everyone down. And Dad won't tell anyone what's inside. You need to come back and explain yourself." I almost laughed. Even now, even after what I'd just done, Thomas was more concerned about appearances than understanding. I don't need to do anything, Thomas. I've spent 39 years trying to explain myself to this family. You're being dramatic. Dad loves you. We all do. He just what? Just thinks I'm a failure? Just never bothered to learn what I actually do for a living? Just introduced his retirement party guests to his 2 successful sons and his disappointing daughter? Silence stretched between us. In the background, I could hear the murmur of the party continuing, though it sounded more subdued now. He didn't mean it like that, Thomas finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, he did. And you know what? It's fine. I stopped needing his approval a long time ago. Then why the dramatic exit? Why embarrass him at his own party? That was the question I'd been asking myself. Why tonight? Why now? After all these years of swallowing my pride and forcing smiles at family gatherings? Maybe it was because I'd finally realized something. I wasn't angry at Dad for not understanding my success. I was angry at myself for still caring whether he did. I have to go, I told Thomas. Naomi, wait. I hung up and started the car. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I caught a glimpse through the banquet hall windows of Dad still sitting at the head table, the open box in front of him. Even from a distance, I could see the papers scattered across the white tablecloth, could see him holding one of the frames. Part of me wanted to know what he was thinking. Part of me wanted to go back inside and watch him read every word, see his face as he finally understood who I'd become. But a bigger part of me realized it didn't matter anymore. I'd spent decades seeking validation from a man who saw my greatest achievements as hobbies. I'd built a company that was changing lives, created technology that was saving patients across the country, earned respect from colleagues and competitors alike. I'd done all of that while waiting for my father to notice. Tonight, driving away from his retirement party, I finally stopped waiting. The box contained 3 items, each one carefully chosen to tell a story Dad had never bothered to learn. Whether he understood that story now, whether it changed anything between us, was no longer my concern. For the first time in my life, my father's opinion of me felt irrelevant. 3 days after the retirement party, Mom called. I was in my office at Lumerin Publishing, the medical device company I'd founded, reviewing prototypes for our latest cardiac monitoring system when her name appeared on my phone screen. Naomi, honey, we need to talk. Her voice sounded tired, strained in a way I'd never heard before. Hi, Mom. How's Dad? That's what I'm calling about. He's not himself since the party. He keeps reading those papers you gave him, over and over. He won't eat, barely sleeps. Yesterday I found him in his office at 3 a.m, just staring at that Forbes article. I set down my coffee, suddenly feeling the weight of what I'd done. I didn't mean to upset him. He's proud of you, sweetheart. He always has been. He just doesn't know how to show it. The familiar defense. The same words Mom had used for decades to explain away Dad's indifference. Mom, he called me a failure in front of 200 people. He didn't mean it that way. You know how your father is with words. He's not good at expressing emotions. I stared out my office window at the bustling research lab below, where my team was developing technology that would help doctors save lives. He expressed himself pretty clearly about Thomas and James. That's different. He understands their work, construction, law. These are things he can relate to. Your field is so complex. He's intimidated by it. Intimidated? The word caught me off guard. Naomi, your father dropped out of college twice before finally getting his engineering degree. He spent his whole career building bridges and buildings, things you can see and touch. What you do, it's like magic to him. He reads your articles and doesn't understand half the words. I'd never known about Dad dropping out of college. In our family mythology, he was the brilliant engineer who'd always known his path. He could have asked me to explain, I said quietly. You know he couldn't. Harold Bennett doesn't ask for explanations. It would mean admitting he doesn't know something. Mom paused, and I could hear Dad's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. Naomi, there's something else. Something I need to tell you about that scholarship you set up. My chest tightened. The Harold Bennett Science Scholarship was the most personal thing in that box. A full-ride scholarship to Oregon State University for students pursuing biomedical engineering. I'd endowed it with $500,000, enough to support students for decades. What about it? Your father. He called the university yesterday. He wanted to make sure it was real, that you'd actually done what the certificate said. And? They told him you're the largest individual donor they've ever had under 50. Not just for the scholarship. Apparently you've been funding their biomedical research lab for 3 years. Anonymous donations, until now. I closed my eyes. Those donations had been my way of giving back, of supporting the next generation of researchers. I'd kept them anonymous because I hadn't wanted recognition. I just wanted to help. He knows about all of it now, Mom continued. The lab has your name on it, Naomi. The Harold Bennett Biomedical Research Lab. They've been trying to thank you for years. I hadn't known they'd named the lab after the scholarship. The irony wasn't lost on me. Dad's name was on cutting-edge research he'd never understand, funded by the daughter he'd dismissed. He's asking to see you, Mom said softly. Will you come over, please? I looked at my calendar, packed with meetings and deadlines. My company was in the middle of negotiations with 3 major hospital systems. I had a prototype deadline next week that could revolutionize emergency cardiac care. But something in Mom's voice made me pause. I'll be there in an hour, I said. As I drove across Portland to my childhood home, I wondered what I was walking into. Was this Dad finally ready to acknowledge what I'd built? Or was it another attempt to minimize my accomplishments, to find a way to make them about him? Either way, I was done pretending his opinion mattered. The girl who desperately wanted her father's approval was gone. In her place was a woman who'd learned to validate herself. Dad was sitting in his study when I arrived, surrounded by the papers from the box. The Forbes article was spread across his desk, along with printouts that looked like they'd come from my company's website. He looked up when I walked in, and I was startled by how much older he seemed than he had 3 days ago. Naomi. His voice was hoarse, uncertain. Thank you for coming. I sat in the chair across from his desk, the same chair where I'd received countless lectures about practical career choices and realistic expectations. Today it felt different. Today, I wasn't the little girl seeking approval. Mom said you wanted to talk. He gestured at the papers scattered around him. I've been doing some reading, about your company, about what you've accomplished. Just now? After 5 years? The question hung between us, sharp and unavoidable. Dad's face flushed slightly. I thought I knew. I thought it was a small medical supply business or something. I didn't realize... He picked up the Forbes article, shaking his head. Naomi, you've built something extraordinary. Yes, I have. My directness seemed to surprise him. He was used to me deflecting compliments, minimizing my achievements to make others comfortable. This device you invented, the cardiac monitor. The article says it saved thousands of lives. Tens of thousands, actually. The latest models are being used in emergency rooms across the country. We're expanding to Europe next year. Dad stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. How did you do it? How did you build all this? The question was so genuine, so devoid of his usual dismissiveness, that it caught me off guard. For a moment, I saw not the father who'd disappointed me, but an old man genuinely trying to understand his daughter's life. Hard work. a lot of very smart people who believed in the vision, and about 15 years of your constant skepticism motivating me to prove you wrong." He winced at that last part. "Naomi, Let me finish." My voice was calm but firm. "I started this company because I saw problems in healthcare that needed solving. Patients were dying because existing monitoring equipment was too expensive, too complex, or too unreliable. I knew I could build something better." I gestured to the Forbes article on his desk. "That device has a 98% accuracy rate and costs 1/3 of what similar equipment used to cost. It's not about the money or the recognition. It's about the emergency room doctor in rural Montana who can now diagnose heart attacks in patients who would have died 20 years ago." Dad's eyes were filling with tears. "I had no idea. I never bothered to learn." "No, you didn't. You dismissed it as a hobby, just like you dismissed everything else I ever cared about." I was wrong. The words came out barely above a whisper. I was so wrong, and I don't know how to fix it. I studied his face, looking for signs of the manipulation I'd grown so used to. But all I saw was genuine remorse and something that looked like awe. "Dad, do you know what I wanted most when I was growing up?" He shook his head. "I wanted you to ask me about my day. Just once. I wanted you to show up to one of my science fairs, to read one of my school papers, to act like what I was doing mattered to you. It did matter. You mattered. I didn't know how to connect with you. Your brothers were so much like me, and you were so..." He searched for the word. "Different? Brilliant. You were brilliant in ways I couldn't understand. It intimidated me." The admission hung in the air between us, raw and honest in a way our family had never been. "There's something else," Dad said, reaching for a manila folder I hadn't noticed before. "I've been making some calls since the party, learning about things I should have known years ago." He opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. Press releases, medical journal articles, university announcements, all featuring my name and work. "Did you know you've been nominated for the National Medal of Technology and Innovation?" He held up an official-looking document. "The White House, Naomi. The President wants to recognize your contributions to American innovation." I had known, actually. The notification had come last month, and I'd been too busy with product launches to think much about it. Awards and recognition had stopped feeling important after years of working for personal satisfaction rather than external validation. "And this." He pulled out another paper. "You've been invited to present at the World Health Organization's conference on medical device innovation. They're calling your work paradigm shifting." Dad set the papers down and looked at me with something approaching wonder. How did I miss all of this? How did I have a daughter changing the world and not even notice? "Because you never looked," I said simply. "You decided who I was when I was 8 years old and never bothered to update your assessment." "I know. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life." He paused, seeming to gather courage for something. "Naomi, would you explain it to me? Your work? I want to understand." For 39 years I dreamed of this moment. Dad, finally asking about my passion, wanting to understand what drove me. Now that it was happening, I felt surprisingly detached from it. It's complex. Medical device engineering requires understanding of physiology, electronics, materials science, data analysis. "I'm not as smart as you," he interrupted. "But I'm not stupid. Try me." I studied his face, seeing genuine curiosity there. Slowly, I began to explain how cardiac monitors work, how I'd identified the flaws in existing technology, how my team had developed solutions that were more accurate and more affordable. Dad listened intently, asking surprisingly thoughtful questions. "So the sensors you developed can detect irregularities that older machines miss?" he asked. "Exactly. And because our device uses machine learning algorithms, it gets better at diagnosis over time, It learns from every patient it monitors. He shook his head in amazement. That's incredible, Naomi. You're saving lives every day. The conversation continued for another hour. Dad asked about my team, my manufacturing process, my plans for expansion. For the first time in my life, he seemed genuinely interested in understanding my world, but something had shifted in me during those 3 days since the party. His attention felt too little, too late. I should go, I said finally. I have a board meeting this afternoon. Wait. Dad stood as I did. Naomi, I know I can't undo 40 years of not seeing you, but I want to try to do better. I want to be the father you deserved. I looked at him, this man who'd shaped so much of my early life through his indifference, and felt something close to pity, not for his ignorance, but for everything he'd missed by choosing not to see me. I appreciate that, Dad, but I'm not the little girl who needed your approval anymore. I've built a life I'm proud of, with or without your understanding. I know you have. That's what makes this so tragic. I missed watching my daughter become extraordinary. I walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope you enjoy your retirement. You earned it. As I drove back to the office, I realized something had been resolved, though not in the way I'd expected. I'd finally gotten my father's attention, his respect, even his admiration, and I'd discovered it no longer mattered to me. 2 weeks later, I was in my office when Thomas called. I almost didn't answer. My relationship with my brothers had grown even more strained since the retirement party, but curiosity got the better of me. Naomi, we have a problem, he said without preamble. Dad's been calling everyone we know, telling them about your company, about your achievements. He's like a broken record. That's a problem? He showed up at my law firm yesterday with printed copies of that Forbes article. He cornered 3 of my partners in the break room and spent an hour explaining your cardiac monitoring device. He doesn't even understand what you do, but he's trying to tell everyone about it. I almost smiled. Dad, who'd never shown interest in my work, was now apparently its biggest advocate. He did the same thing at James's office, Thomas continued, and at his golf club, and at Mom's book club. He's driving everyone crazy, Naomi. He's become obsessed. With what? With you. With making sure everyone knows how successful his daughter is. It's like he's trying to make up for 40 years of not bragging about you by doing it all at once. I leaned back in my chair, processing this. Dad, who'd introduced me as still figuring things out for most of my adult life, was now apparently my unofficial publicist. There's more, Thomas said. He wants to throw you a party, a celebration of your achievements. He's already called the country club, started making a guest list. He wants to invite everyone from the retirement party and formally, apologize, introduce you properly. The irony was thick. After a lifetime of being overlooked, Dad wanted to put me center stage. But now that he was finally ready to see me, I'd move beyond needing to be seen by him. Tell him no, I said. What? Tell him I don't want a party. I don't need him to introduce me to people. I don't need his validation or his public apologies. Naomi, he's trying. He's really trying to make things right. I know he is. But that's for him, not for me. I'm not interested in being his redemption story. The next morning, Dad showed up at my office. My assistant tried to stop him, but he'd apparently charmed his way past building security and made it all the way to my floor. We need to talk, he said, standing in my doorway with the same determined expression I'd seen him wear when tackling difficult engineering problems. Dad, I'm in the middle of... I know you don't want the party, Thomas told me, but I need you to understand something. He stepped into my office and closed the door behind him. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for you. I don't need you to do anything for me. Yes, you do. His voice was firmer than I'd heard it in weeks. Because I spent 40 years telling people you were just okay. Just average. Just my daughter who hadn't figured things out yet. And now I know the truth. But they don't. He pulled out a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. Do you know what this is? I shook my head. It's a list of every person I told that you were wasting your time with science projects. Every colleague I complained to about your impractical career choices. Every family friend I told not to take your work seriously. His voice cracked slightly. It's a long list, Naomi, and I owe it to you to set the record straight with every single person on it. I stared at the paper, understanding finally dawning. This wasn't about his guilt or his need for redemption. This was about repairing damage he'd done to my reputation, to how people saw me. I spent decades undermining you without even realizing it, he continued. Let me spend whatever time I have left building you up. For the first time since the retirement party, I felt my emotional armor crack slightly. Not because I needed his help, but because I finally understood the depth of what he was trying to repair. Okay, I said quietly. But we do this my way. Dad's face lit up with relief and gratitude. However you want it. Looking at him in that moment, I realized that my revenge had been more complete than I'd intended. I'd wanted him to see me, and now he couldn't see anything else. I'd wanted him to understand what he'd missed, and now he was drowning in regret. I'd wanted him to acknowledge my success, and now he was desperate to proclaim it to anyone who would listen. But somehow, his recognition felt less important than the journey I'd taken to earn it. The best revenge, I realized, had been building a life so successful that his opinion of it had become irrelevant. Everything else was just epilogue. As I worked alongside my father to plan an event that would properly introduce me to his world, I couldn't help but reflect on the strange turn my revenge had taken. From a moment of anger to an opportunity for healing, even if the healing was more for him than for me.